Okay, friends, tonight we're going to go back in time again, back to old President Abe Lincoln, who, believe it or not, really was a badass. Also, quite a few ways, but mostly in wrestling. Now, wrestling, you'll see this gentleman here, Farmer Burns, he does go back to the late 1800s. And then Frank Gotch does as well. And they were still around after the turn of the century and into the 20s and 30s, I think, at least. But yeah, wrestling has always been a big part of American physical culture, all the way back even to George Washington and some other presidents, which we're going to see later. There's Frank Gotch, who's one of the greatest. A lot of people consider him the greatest. And he was taught by Farmer Burns. This is an ad from like a 1900 magazine that I have, Physical Culture. So you see and this one's from a 1924 Strength magazine, advertising Earl Lederman's book on muscular development, and obviously you see guys wrestling. I saw somebody talking about that any contest between strongmen, besides all the various lifts that they suggested, also suggested a wrestling match where one either gets pinned or one submits as part of the contest between strongmen, and that goes way back. That one I just showed you, I believe, is from 1902. They promoted kind of a more refined wrestling thing where you're in your regular school clothes, but here it is. I'm just going to show the pictures. They're pretty much self-explanatory. So you have girls hand wrestling was one thing. And they had, the next one will be girls stick wrestling, which is obvious what that is. And then and you see, it looks like they're in their regular school clothes. And there's a couple young men in their school clothes getting ready to wrestle. They didn't get into singlets or tights or anything for this event, apparently. And there they are doing a tug of war, which isn't exactly wrestling, but, kind of a related thing. It was all part of the school championship that Physical Culture magazine back in those days ran. And they did give awards. Looks like, top three, so it would be at least a simulated gold, silver, and bronze medals. I'm not sure what they actually were, but they got something. And then we had... again, from the later magazine, I believe this was from the 1924 Strength magazine, this article called Let's Wrestle. And you see that it's part, whatever that is. Apparently this has a whole lot of parts. I'm just going to show some of the moves that they show. So some of this was probably along the lines of what was happening back in Abe Lincoln's day, but we'll cover that in a little more detail as we get down the road here. Now, wrestling teams, just like lifting teams, were prevalent too. Here's a typical one from like early turn of the century, like 1924 wrestling team. So it's been very, very popular obviously nowadays we have worldwide wrestling and this other kind of stuff, but it's not a new thing. Now, what made Lincoln such a badass was he was a wrestler. He was a wrestler in his county, and he had one loss in 300 matches. And there's one particular match that he had when his family he grew up, he was born in Kentucky. His family had some land disputes and different things like that. Ended up going to Indiana and then finally to Illinois. Where when he was 21, he helped his dad clear a bunch of trees, from a forest to be able to farm the land. So that's one thing that helped him get really strong. And he also started wrestling. And in fact, so you saw that kind of cartoon back there with George Washington wrestling. Abe, how wrestlers have to have, a title. He became known as the Grand Wrestler. And again, we harken back to when he was younger and helping his father clear the land. And they didn't have chainsaws. They had axes. So, and Abe also did it. He was very competitive. I show Chuck Sipes here was a lumberjack, but he had the modern equipment to do it here. He had the chainsaw, which Abe didn't have. So you could say in a way that Abe was an amateur lumberjack, and it's kind of, I'm sure that helps you get strong. And we'll see something about one of the feats he did that was pretty interesting. He did other manual labor. Was a flatboat navigator, storekeeper, soldier, surveyor, postmaster. This picture here is depicting his defeat of a guy named Jack Armstrong, who was the previous #1 wrestler in his county in Illinois. Apparently Jack was fouling him quite a bit. Abe got pissed off, ended up throwing him on the ground for the win, which is what's being described here. And that was in 1830. Now, this picture obviously is bogus, but it was a composite that somebody made kind of as a joke. Obviously, they didn't have these big belts back then. But, it's a depiction of what Abe might have looked like with one of those belts. It does talk about, though, that he won almost every match, and he did get inducted into a Wrestling Hall of Fame. And besides his wrestling skills, as we mentioned, he was also really skilled with an axe. And I found this little write-up here, which talked about in 1865. So he's a little older here. He's not a kid anymore. Where he sees a 7-pound axe on the ground, picks it up, holds it by its very end, and is able to hold it straight out, and apparently for some length of time. Well, that's the kind of thing that Slim the Hammer Man was known for, except not so much with axes, but with sledgehammers, because he worked in a quarry, and that's how he started to develop that skill, and he just kind of ran with it. And so that is the thing that strongmen do is, and grip guys, is hold a sledgehammer or an axe by the end of the handle and try to hold it straight. It's not easy to do. And you see, if you look at that write-up, it says that a bunch of other strong guys tried to duplicate Abe's feat, and they couldn't do it. So, all that said, apparently Abe was quite a badass guy. So, I'm going to leave it go here. I'm going to say rest in peace, badass Abe. There's that picture again of Jack Armstrong on the ground after he threw him. He was a tall, lanky guy, had long legs, and didn't weigh a whole lot, but apparently he was strong. So thanks for watching. Please hit those subscribe buttons if you haven't subscribed yet, and the likes if you liked the video. And I'm out. Thanks.